During a power outage, I came home early and heard my husband whisper to the neighbor. Once her accident pays out, we're off to Mexico. They clinked glasses. Plotting my demise, they didn't notice me slip away. I returned later with a flashlight, pretending shock at their meeting. A month later, my phone was flooded with his desperate pleas, "Please come back." But my revenge was already in motion, and he had no idea what I knew. Man, where do I even start with this absolute dumpster? Fire of a story? Y'all are gonna think I'm making this up, but I swear on my mama's cornbread recipe, this happened to me just last month. Still feels like some twisted Netflix series, but here we are. So picture this, it's a regular Tuesday evening, right? I'm wrapping up my shift at the insurance office downtown. Nothing fancy, just pushing papers and dealing with claims all day. The weather had been absolutely wild that week, storms rolling through like nobody's business. I'm talking about the kind of weather that makes you want to grab a Bud Light and hunker down on the couch with some Netflix, you know? Anyway, I'm about to clock out when the lights start flickering, then boom, complete blackout, the whole downtown area just went dark like someone flipped a giant switch. My coworkers and I are standing around with our phone flashlights looking like deer in headlights. Management decides to send everyone home early since the backup generators were acting up and nobody could get any work done anyway. Now here's where it gets interesting. I usually don't get home until around 7 on weekdays, but this blackout situation meant I was pulling into my driveway at like 5:30. My husband wasn't expecting me, obviously. I drive this old Honda Civic that's quieter than a church mouse, especially when you're coasting into the driveway without really gunning it. The house was dark, which made sense given the whole neighborhood was without power. But I could see some flickering light coming from the kitchen window, probably candles or a flashlight. I figured my husband was just trying to make the best of the situation, maybe cracking open a cold one while waiting for the power to come back. I grabbed my purse and was heading toward the front door when I heard voices. Low voices, like people, trying not to wake someone up. That struck me as odd because who would he be talking to? We don't really have friends over during the week, and definitely not during a power outage. Instead of going straight to the front door like I normally would, something made me pause. Call it woman's intuition or whatever, but I decided to creep around the side of the house toward the kitchen window. Yeah, I know how that sounds, like I'm some paranoid wife checking up on her husband, but something just felt off. The window was cracked open slightly because of the heat, and that's when I heard it. Clear as day, my husband's voice talking to someone. But it wasn't just casual conversation. There was this conspiratorial tone that made my blood run cold. "Look, I've been thinking about this for months," he was saying. "The insurance policy is solid, and with her job at the insurance company, nobody's gonna question anything too hard." My heart literally stopped. I'm pressed against the side of my own house, listening to my husband of 6 years talk about me like I'm some kind of business transaction. But it gets worse. Another voice. And I recognized it immediately as our next-door neighbor, Gary. This dude I've been saying hello to at the mailbox for years, bringing his Amazon packages when he's out of town, the whole neighborly thing. "You sure about the timing?" Gary asks. "These things can get messy if they're not done right." "That's why we wait for the perfect opportunity," my husband responds. "Something that looks completely natural. Maybe a slip and fall, or better yet, a car accident on one of those winding roads she takes to work. Once her accident pays out, we're off to Mexico. I've already got our tickets booked for next month." Y'all, I literally had to grab onto the side of the house to keep from falling over. These two grown men were sitting in my kitchen during a power outage, planning my freaking demise like they're discussing the weather. And then, I kid you not, I heard the clink of glasses. They were toasting to my future death. Update. Holy smokes, the responses to this are insane. Some of you are asking if I called the cops right then and there. Trust me, I wanted to, but I had zero proof except what I overheard. Plus, I needed to be smart about this. What would you have done in that moment? Confronted them or played it cool? My hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold my phone. Every instinct was screaming at me to burst through that door and confront them, but something held me back. Maybe it was the shock, or maybe some survival instinct kicked in and told me I needed to be smarter than that. I carefully backed away from the window and made my way back to my car. My mind was racing faster than a NASCAR driver at Daytona. I sat there for probably 10 minutes just trying to process what I'd heard. My husband, the man I shared a bed with, made breakfast for, did laundry for, was literally planning to kill me for insurance money. With our neighbor, no less. The worst part? I started thinking back over the past few months, looking for signs I might have missed. Had he been acting different? Had there been weird conversations or strange behavior? Honestly, nothing jumped out at me, which made it even more terrifying. This wasn't some crime of passion or heat-of-the-moment thing. This was calculated, planned, cold-blooded. I finally pulled myself together enough to come up with a plan. I drove around the block a few times, giving them time to finish whatever sick conversation they were having. Then I pulled into the driveway again, this time making sure to slam the car door and jingle my keys like I normally would. I walked up to the front door and called out, "Honey, I'm home early. Power went out at work." When I walked into the kitchen, with my phone flashlight on, acting all surprised, there was my husband sitting alone at the kitchen table with a beer. Gary was nowhere to be seen. "Oh, hey babe," he says, cool as a cucumber. "Yeah, the power's been out for about an hour." Gary stopped by to check if we had any flashlights, but he just left. The fact that he lied so smoothly to my face made my skin crawl. I played along though, acting all concerned about the power situation and asking if he needed help finding candles or whatever. Inside, I was screaming. That night was the longest night of my life. I'm lying next to this man who's planning to kill me, pretending everything's normal while my mind is going a million miles an hour. Every time he shifted in his sleep, I jumped. Every sound in the house made me paranoid. I barely slept. The next morning, I called in sick to work. I needed time to think and figure out my next move. I couldn't go to the police with just an overheard conversation. They'd need evidence. Plus, what if they didn't believe me? What if somehow word got back to him that I was suspicious? Instead, I did what any smart woman in 2024 would do. I started gathering evidence. I downloaded one of those voice recording apps on my phone and started recording conversations whenever possible. I began paying closer attention to his phone, his computer, his behavior. I started documenting everything in a Google Doc that I kept hidden in a folder on my laptop. Over the next couple of weeks, I played the role of the perfect, unsuspecting wife. I made his favorite dinners, laughed at his jokes, acted like everything was peachy. But inside, I was building a case. I also started being extra careful. I changed my route to work, started parking in different spots, avoided being alone in situations that could look like accidents. I even started texting my sister my location whenever I went somewhere, just in case. But here's where it gets really good. I decided to beat them at their own game. Update. Y'all are asking some great questions about what evidence I was gathering and how I plan to expose them. Without giving away too much, let's just say I got creative with technology and some old-fashioned detective work. But here's my question for you. If someone was planning to kill you for money, would you try to get them arrested, or would you want revenge? About 3 weeks after the power outage incident, I hit the jackpot. My husband had gotten sloppy, probably because he thought I was completely clueless. He left his laptop open while he went to shower, and I found email exchanges between him and Gary. Y'all, these idiots had been planning this through Gmail like it was some kind of casual weekend trip. The emails laid out everything. How they were going to split the insurance money, detailed plans about making my death look accidental, even research they'd done about investigation procedures. Gary had apparently done this before with his ex-wife a few states over, though they never got caught because she really did die in what looked like an accident. I screenshot everything and saved it to a cloud drive that my husband didn't know about. I also forwarded copies to a separate email account I created specifically for this situation. But instead of going straight to the police, I decided to get creative. See, I work in insurance, right? I know exactly how these investigations work, what red flags they look for, and how to make sure justice gets served properly. I started by quietly changing my insurance beneficiaries without telling my husband. Instead of him getting everything, I made sure most of it would go to my sister and some charities. I also increased my life insurance policy, which might sound crazy, but stay with me on this. Then I reached out to a lawyer through a friend's recommendation, someone who specializes in domestic cases and had experience with attempted murder situations. I showed him everything I'd gathered, and he helped me understand my options. The lawyer connected me with a detective who specialized in these kinds of cases. Turns out they'd been investigating Gary for his ex-wife's death, but never had enough evidence to make anything stick. My recordings and screenshots were exactly what they needed to reopen that case. But here's the beautiful part. Instead of just having them arrested, we decided to let them hang themselves. The detectives set up a sting operation. They had me wear a wire and try to get my husband to talk about the plan on record. It took a few tries, but eventually I got him to spill everything while we were having dinner at home. You know, babe, I said casually while we were eating pizza on the couch, I've been thinking about that life insurance policy at work. Do you think I should increase it, with all these crazy accidents happening lately? His eyes literally lit up. Oh yeah, definitely. You can never be too careful. Maybe double it, just in case. Just in case what? I pressed, acting all innocent. And then this fool started talking about how accidents happen all the time, how important it is to make sure your loved ones are taken care of, basically giving me everything the police needed to prove intent. The recording was crystal clear. Between that, the emails, and the neighbor's previous suspicious history, the police had more than enough for arrests. But we still weren't done. The detective wanted to catch them in the act of actually planning something. Concrete, not just talking about it. So we set up a situation where I would be vulnerable, told my husband I was going on a weekend work retreat at this remote conference center about 2 hours away. I didn't actually go, of course. Instead, I checked into a hotel near our house, under a fake name, and waited. The police had surveillance set up around our house and the conference center location. Sure enough, that weekend Gary came over, and they started making concrete plans. The police recorded them discussing everything from timing to methods to their escape plan to Mexico. They even went so far as to drive out to the conference center location to scout it out for the best place to stage an accident. That's when the police moved in and arrested both of them. Update. The amount of support from you all has been incredible. For those asking what happened next, well, let's just say karma is real, and justice was served. But I'm curious what you think about the revenge part. Was I wrong to let them dig their own graves instead of just turning them in immediately? Some people are saying I should have gone to the police right away. The arrests happened on a Sunday evening. I was still at the hotel when the detective called to tell me they had both my husband and Gary in custody. The charges were serious: conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, and in Gary's case, they were reopening the investigation into his ex-wife's death with new evidence. I drove home that night to find police tape around Gary's house and news vans starting to gather. Our quiet little suburban neighborhood had turned into a crime scene, and I was right in the middle of it. The next few weeks were absolutely insane. Reporters were calling, neighbors were gossiping, and I had to deal with lawyers, insurance investigators, and police detectives constantly. But you know what? I felt free for the first time in months. My husband tried calling me from jail, but I blocked his number. His family reached out trying to convince me it was all some big misunderstanding, but I had recordings of him literally planning my death. Hard to misunderstand that. The legal process took several months, but both of them ended up pleading guilty to avoid trial. My husband got 15 years for conspiracy to commit murder and insurance fraud. Gary got 25 because of his previous wife's case. Turns out my evidence helped prove he'd actually killed her too. During the proceedings, I learned just how close I'd come to not being here to tell this story. They had been planning to make their move within the next month. If that power outage hadn't happened, if I hadn't come home early, if I hadn't heard that conversation, I'd probably be dead right now. The insurance companies got involved too, obviously. There was a whole investigation into whether I'd somehow been involved or if this was some elaborate scheme. But all my evidence and the timeline proved that I was completely innocent and had just been incredibly smart about protecting myself. Here's the crazy part though. Gary's ex-wife's family reached out to thank me. Apparently they'd always suspected something wasn't right about her death, but could never prove anything. My evidence finally gave them closure and justice for their daughter. I ended up selling the house because there was no way I could keep living next door to where Gary used to live, and honestly, every room reminded me of my husband's betrayal. I moved across town to a cute little apartment complex with better security and started fresh. The whole experience changed me in ways I'm still figuring out. I'm definitely more cautious now, but also stronger. I learned I could handle way more than I ever thought possible. I also learned that sometimes the people closest to you are the ones you should trust the least. My sister jokes that I should write a book or become a private investigator, but honestly, I just want to live a quiet life and never deal with anything like this again. Although I will say, working in insurance is way more interesting now that I know firsthand how these fraud schemes work. The money from selling the house set me up pretty well, and I'm actually thinking about going back to school. Maybe studying criminal justice or something related. This whole experience showed me I have a talent for investigation and evidence gathering. As for dating again, that's gonna be a while. Trust issues much? But I'm okay with being single for now. I've got a great security system, a dog that barks at everything, and zero tolerance for sketchy behavior. The funniest part is that about a month after everything went down, I started getting calls and messages from my husband in prison. Apparently, he'd finally figured out that I was the one who'd set everything up. His messages went from apologetic to angry to desperate to bargaining. Please come back, I can explain everything. Turned into, you ruined my life. Turned into, I'll give you anything if you just help me appeal this case. I saved every message as evidence of his continued attempts to manipulate me, but mostly I just found them pathetic. This man had been planning to kill me for insurance money, and he had the audacity to ask for my help getting out of prison, so my neighbors who stayed in the area still treat me like some kind of local celebrity. I'm the woman who outsmarted her would-be killer and brought down a serial murderer. It's weird being known for something like that, but I guess there are worse reputations to have. I've been asked to speak at a few women's safety seminars about trusting your instincts and what to do if you suspect someone close to you might be dangerous. It's strange talking about such a personal experience to rooms full of strangers, but if my story helps even one person recognize warning signs or take action to protect themselves, it's worth it. Looking back now, I can see little signs I missed at the time, like how my husband had been asking weird questions about my work schedule, or how he'd started being extra nice right around the time he increased my life insurance policy. Gary had been unusually interested in when I came and went, asking casual questions about my routine that seemed friendly at the time, but were actually him gathering information. The scariest part is how normal everything seemed right up until that power outage. I was living my regular life, going to work, doing laundry, planning weekend activities, completely unaware that the two men I trusted most in my daily life were plotting to kill me. But here's the thing, I survived. Not only did I survive, but I made sure they faced consequences for what they planned to do to me and what Gary had already done to his ex-wife. I turned what was supposed to be their perfect crime into their downfall. These days, I'm actually doing better than I have in years. I've got a new job at a different insurance company with better pay and benefits. I've made some new friends who don't know me as the woman whose husband tried to kill her, but just as me. I've started taking self-defense classes and learned how to shoot at a gun range, just in case I ever need to protect myself again. My relationship with my family got stronger through all this too. My sister and I are closer than ever, and my parents finally understand why I've always been independent and maybe a little paranoid about trusting people too quickly. The legal stuff is finally wrapping up. There were civil suits, insurance investigations, and all kinds of paperwork, but my lawyer handled most of it. I'll probably never have to worry about money again, which is ironic considering they were trying to kill me for money that they're never going to see. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd confronted them that night instead of being smart about it. Would they have tried to kill me right then? Would they have found some way to explain it away? Would I have believed whatever lie they came up with? I'm glad I'll never have to find out. I'm glad I trusted my instincts, gathered evidence, and worked with professionals to make sure justice was served properly. I'm glad Gary's ex-wife's family finally got answers. And I'm definitely glad that two dangerous men are behind bars where they can't hurt anyone else. The whole experience taught me that you never really know someone completely, no matter how long you've been with them or how much you think you can trust them. But it also taught me that I'm stronger and smarter than I ever gave myself credit for. I'm not the same person I was before that power outage, and that's probably a good thing. I'm more careful, more aware, but also more confident in my ability to handle whatever life throws at me. And hey, at least I've got one hell of a story to tell at parties, right? Though I usually wait until I know people pretty well before I drop the "my husband tried to kill me for insurance money" bomb on them. Tends to kill the mood otherwise. Life's pretty good now. Quiet, peaceful, and best of all, safe. Sometimes that's all you can ask for.